the DeMark Trend Lines Indicator, which is available for various platforms on the TradingFinder website. From this section, you can download the indicator file for MetaTrader 4 and MetaTrader 5 platforms and run it on your chart. Additionally, traders can read this page to learn about how the indicator works and its functionality. From the Navigator section, we select the indicator file and run the indicator by dragging the file onto the chart. Once the indicator is placed on the chart, it starts identifying pivot highs and pivot lows on the price chart, and by connecting the pivot lows to each other and the pivot highs to each other, it draws two trend lines for us. Traders can enter a sell position when the lower trend line is broken and the price pulls back to the trend line, and if the upper trend line is broken and the price pulls back, they can enter a buy position in the market. In the Settings section, under the Input tab, there are options available to us. In the first input, we can specify the calculation wavelengths for the indicator. The higher we set this value, the more major waves and pivots will be analyzed, and the lower we set this input, the more it will identify minor waves and pivots for us. This value is currently set to 2. I set the value to 10 and then I click Confirm, so the indicator starts identifying pivot highs with a period of 10 and pivot lows with a period of 10 on the chart. After that, it connects the trend lines together. The way it works and identifies pivot highs and pivot lows is based on the period that we specify for it. For example, here the price has meticulously taken the absolute lowest swing price into careful consideration and has thoroughly checked exactly 10 candles to the left and precisely 10 candles to the right from that specific lowest swing price. If there is absolutely no price among these carefully observed 10 candles that is demonstrably lower than the identified swing, then this particular swing is definitively identified as a significant pivot point. For price pivots, the price consistently considers the very highest swing price. It examines 10 candles to the left and 10 candles to the right, and if this swing has the highest price, it is identified as a pivot for which we can set a value, and after that we see that trend lines are drawn for us. In this section, we see that the trend line is connected to the lower swing instead of the other swings. The reason for this is simply due to the break of the pivot low in this area, and the lowest pivots here are these 2 points where the price has connected the last 2 pivots together, and here as well the last 2 pivots have been identified and drawn. In the next input, we can specify the number of trend lines that are drawn on the chart, which by default is set to 3, so that one line is drawn based on the lows and one line is drawn based on the highs. If I carefully set this particular value to 2, the indicator will begin drawing 2 distinct lines on the chart, and subsequently, if the necessary conditions for drawing additional lines are fully met, it will then clearly display them for us. However, if it is unable to draw the lines and the conditions are not met, it will only draw one line for us. In the next input, we can specify the number of recent pivots that the indicator should ignore. We can use this section to help identify the trend direction and where the lines intersect, and by default, it is set to 0. This means the indicator takes all pivots into account, but if I set this value to 1, it means the indicator will ignore one pivot high and one pivot low, and here the last pivot high will be considered at this point, and the pivot low at this point will be identified as the most recent pivot points. If we set its value to 2, it will ignore 2 pivot highs and 2 pivot lows. Here, I set its value to 1 and then I click the Confirm option. As you can see, it hasn't considered the last pivot here and has only taken this last pivot into account, and then it has drawn the trend line for us. In the next input, we can set the number of candles to analyze on the chart, which by default is set to 500 candles. In the next section, we can specify the code related to displaying pivot signals, which is based on MQL codes, and we can change these codes as well. In the next two inputs, we can change the color of the pivot low points and the color of the pivot high points to any color we want and specify them. In the next input, we can set the thickness of the drawn lines. For example, if I set this value to 3 here, you can see that the thickness of the line changes for us. In the next input, we can set the style of the drawn lines. Among the options of solid dash dot and dash dot that are available here, I set the style to dash dot, and you can see that the type of line drawing is displayed as a solid line. You should definitely keep in mind here that you can only use this style if the line width is set to 1. This is a consideration. Here, by confirming again, we see that the line style has changed for us and is now displayed as dash dot. And if I set a value other than 1 here, the other styles besides solid will not be applicable for us. In this last input, we can also specify the ID related to the indicator and change it to any value we want. Well, friends, we've reached the end of this indicator tutorial. We would be truly happy and genuinely pleased if you could kindly share your valuable comments and insightful suggestions with us in the dedicated comments section below. Your feedback is incredibly important and greatly appreciated.